I'm gonna be honest. Ever since I saw the pure drip potential of the new Warlock exotic armor, Mataiodoxia, I wanted to weave it into a build. Mataiodoxia literally means vanity in Greek after all. At first glance, Mataiodoxia is simply a way to provide suspend to the Prismatic Warlock kit, since Mono Strand already has a number of powerful ways to create suspending AoE effects. After giving it a try on my Prismatic Warlock, I found that there is so much more lurking beneath the surface. Not only will you suspend every enemy in sight, but you could also remove barrier champion shields with a single Arcane Needle and absolutely obliterate any groups of enemies that dare to get too close with huge AoE explosions. This build has become my favorite Prismatic Warlock build I've found so far, so I couldn't wait to share it with everyone. Hey everyone, I'm Rizeki, and welcome to my build guide for the Mataiodoxia Prismatic Warlock in Destiny 2. As always, thanks so much for checking out the video. You guys are absolutely killing it with the support recently, and we're actually about to hit 5,000 subscribers here on the channel. So, if you've been enjoying the content and haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave a like on the video. I promise you won't want to miss anything I have planned for the coming weeks. But now, with my shameless YouTuber plugging out of the way, let's jump right into the build. We, of course, will be focusing our build around the exotic chest armor, Mataiodoxia. This exotic will mark any target damaged by our Arcane Needle melee ability. After a marked target is defeated, a suspending burst will be emitted from the target's location. The size of the suspending burst will increase based on the number of Arcane Needles that they were hit by before dying. In addition, defeating suspended targets will return melee energy to you, and your Arcane Needles are now also able to pierce barrier champion shields. Our core mechanic for this build should be pretty straightforward. Hit a target with our Arcane Needle melee, then kill that target to suspend nearby enemies. There are a number of supporting components in the Prismatic Warlock kit that help to bring this to even higher levels. We will naturally need to take Arcane Needle as our melee ability, but there are also two aspects that synergize very nicely with our supercharged needles. For one, Feed the Void will give us Devour upon defeating a target with an ability. Since we'll be using our Arcane Needles to defeat enemies, we should be able to easily proc Feed the Void, granting us Devour and keeping us alive for a long time. Our second aspect is actually going to be Weaver's Call. Now, although this build is not focused on Threadlings at all, we will be dealing a lot of strand damage. With Weaver's Call, any target defeated by strand damage has a chance to generate a perched Threadling. These Threadlings will attack targets you damage, causing a small AoE explosion when reaching their target. If you wanted to deploy all your perched Threadlings at once, you could choose to activate your class ability. Speaking of the class ability, any of the available ones that we have can be used depending on what you like. I personally like to use Phoenix Dive, especially since it's an easy source of instant healing for when you're in a tight spot. You might be wondering why I didn't mention healing grenades. You could choose this as your grenade option, but to better synergize with our aspects as well as fragments that we're going to talk about in a bit, you'll want to take Vortex grenades instead. Vortex grenades will be another method to activate Feed the Void. Healing grenades will not do this, as healing does not apply to targets, except yourself, of course. By defeating targets with our Vortex grenade, we will either be granting Devour to ourselves or gaining healing from Devour if it's already applied to us. Because of this, we don't need to worry about taking healing grenades to keep ourselves alive, since we already get healing from other sources. But, Rizeki, why not just take Threadling grenades? Isn't that better than Vortex? Well, that's a great question, and to answer that, we need to talk about our fragments. There are 3 key fragments that will interact directly with our Vortex grenades. Our build is all about applying debuffs to enemies to either CC them through the use of Suspend, or through Void debuffs to delete enemies such as Weaken and Volatile. Facet of Dominance will grant our Vortex grenades the ability to weaken targets they damage. Not only is Weaken going to make enemies take more damage, but there's another fragment that's also going to increase this damage even further. Facet of Courage causes our light abilities to deal increased damage to enemies affected by darkness debuffs. And we have a pretty strong darkness debuff from Mataiodoxia. Every enemy we defeat using our Arcane Needle melee will suspend all nearby enemies. So by suspending enemies, then throwing a grenade, we gain the increased damage from Facet of Courage, as well as the increased damage from the Weaken effect. Oh, and that's not all. Our third key fragment here is Facet of Bravery. This fragment will grant volatile rounds to our Void weapons for getting grenade kills, and unraveling rounds to our strand weapons for defeating enemies with our melee. If played correctly, you should have an incredibly high uptime on all your buffs. Unraveling rounds and suspend for melee kills, Weaken and Volatile from our grenades, and Devour from any ability kills. From this combination of buffs to yourself and debuffs to enemies, nothing will be able to touch you while you wipe all your enemies off the battlefield. And the whole time, you'll be healing from each and every kill you get. But of course, we still have 2 more fragment slots. Both of these will be dedicated to our Arcane Needle melee ability. Facet of Blessing will give us an extra boost of health regeneration when defeating enemies with our melees, and Facet of Dawn will grant us Radiant for damaging an enemy with our melee. Facet of Dawn is, of course, optional, so if there is a different fragment that you feel fits better here, you can decide to swap it in. Finally, your super choice is up to your own personal preference. Your super will not make or break the build, so you should pick whatever best suits the content you'll be playing. Personally, I like to take either Needle Storm or Nova Bomb. Not only are they a good thematic match for this build, as we pretty much are using entirely Strand and Void damage, but they also are great burst DPS options. Now it's time to talk about the rest of our loadout, starting with weapons. Since we already took Facet of Bravery, it should be obvious that I'll be recommending either Strand or Void weapons. To shred through enemies even faster, my go-to primary ammo weapon pairing for this build has to be the exotic pulse rifle, Graviton Lance. The Cosmology perk, in combination with our volatile rounds from Facet of Bravery, make the biggest screen nuke of all time. You could also opt to use other weapons that benefit from volatile rounds if you would prefer to have an exotic weapon slot open. Any weapon with Repulsor Brace is a solid choice. Just make sure your weapon choice here is a Void weapon to make the most out of our fragments. Our special ammo weapon will be none other than the new Strand Rocket sidearm, the Call. Not only is this weapon a great pick on its own, but it has the enhanced synergies with the build by being a Strand weapon. For one, just like our Void weapon, we will have unraveling rounds from Facet of Bravery. Secondly, by defeating targets with a Strand weapon, we have a chance of proccing our Weaver's Call aspect to create a perched Threadling. Our rocket pistol, plus Threadlings, plus unraveling projectiles creates a ton of additional AoE damage. If for some reason you're not a fan of the Call, you can swap it for another Strand weapon instead. A great exotic pairing is the classic exotic auto rifle Quicksilver Storm, for example. And to keep with this theme, our heavy weapon should also be either Strand or Void. My favorite choices are either the Void Grenade Launcher Edge Transit or the Strand Grenade Launcher Cataphract GL3. Our final stop in our loadout is our armor mods and seasonal artifact mods. Here we're going to have a very standard set of armor mods to generate bonus orbs of power with our melee kills. Our head armor is going to have a copy of Harmonic Siphon and hands-on, and our arms will have 2 copies of either heavy-handed or firepower in order to generate orbs of power from our ability damage. Our arms will also have a copy of Momentum Transfer to help bolster our melee energy regen. Our chest armor will of course contain any resist mods that we need for the activity we're currently playing. Leg armor can be any combination of common mods, but my recommendation is at least 1 copy of Recuperation for additional healing when picking up an orb. Last but certainly not least, our class item will have a copy of Reaper as well as a copy of Outreach. If you happen to be playing this build during the Echoes episode, we also have access to a handful of extremely good seasonal artifact mods that make this build even better. Void Hegemony and Expanding Abyss are clear choices for making our Vortex Grenades even better. Since our grenades will be weakening enemies from our Facet of Dominance fragment, we will be able to deal even more grenade damage to those weakened targets because of Expanding Abyss. And if we defeat those weakened targets, Void Hegemony will grant us a bonus Void Overshield as well. Finally, Transference is a must-have mod as it will greatly increase the damage of our melee and grenades while we are Transcendent. And that is everything for the build. With everything set up and ready to go, here's how you're going to want to approach using it. We want to primarily focus on setting off our gameplay loop by using our Arcane Needle melee. Even if you aren't able to pick up a kill with the initial melee, Mataiodoxia will mark hit targets. Any marked target that dies will emit a suspending burst, meaning you do not need to get the kill with the powered melee itself. Once you kill the marked target, it will suspend all nearby enemies. You could either use your grenade to deal massive damage with Facet of Courage and Weaken, or you could just kill all the suspended targets with your weapons. If your melee was able to get the initial kill, then your Strand weapon will be able to do a large amount of AoE damage with Unraveling Rounds and Threadlings. Alternatively, using Graviton Lance will create Void Explosions to defeat the suspended targets. If you have volatile rounds from a grenade kill, you could also create volatile explosions in addition to your Graviton Lance explosions, essentially creating a huge Void Explosion chain reaction. This entire time, you are healing from Devour, and every suspended target you defeat is refunding melee energy to kickstart the whole combo again. If you ever find yourself on cooldowns on most of your abilities, you can rely on your weapons, especially if they are still buffed by Fast of Bravery, to defeat targets while waiting for your cooldowns to finish. The other massive elephant in the room that I've been ignoring up until this point is Transcendence. With an equal combination of usage between your Strand and Void damage, you should be able to quickly build up your Transcendent meter. Becoming Transcendent is very strong on this build, since the improved ability regen will allow you to very quickly regain Arcane Needle charges. While Transcendent, you'll be able to spam Arcane Needles and grenades, which just supercharges our build's entire combo. You shouldn't have to worry about focusing on building up your meter charge too much, so long as you are using your weapons an equal amount. With everything said, this build is a really fun and potent one. It's pretty unique from the most common prismatic builds currently, and has the added benefit of being able to stun 2 types of champions intrinsically. Suspend will stun unstoppables, and your Arcane Needles will break barrier shields. All of the fragments, aspects, and abilities flow into one another, and everything builds off of everything else. To me, this is the perfect storm of both darkness and light mechanics, and does a great job of showing the potential of the Prismatic Subclass on Warlock. If you're ready to try the build out for yourself, I've left a dim loadout link in the video description, which you could use to apply the build and get up and running as quickly as possible. If you try the build out, let me know what you think in the comment section down below, or over in our Discord server, also linked in the video description. I'd love to hear your thoughts, what you like, what you dislike, or what you'd change. And if you did enjoy the video and the build, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. I've got a number of meta-analysis videos and build guides in the works, and you'll want to know exactly when those drop. But with everything said, I think that's all I've got for now. As always, I've been Rizeki, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.